wonderful guest of honor, Stan Sakai. We are celebrating the 35th anniversary of USAGI YOJIMBO, which is very impressive. And as Stan just said, he's been doing this for a long time, and I know you started out as a letterer.
Well, I started off as a professional in the comics community as a letterer, but before then I was doing mainly artwork for advertising in the Los Angeles area. Record album covers, book illustrations, advertising, basically as a freelancer, anything I could find. And I had already started doing USAGI. It hadn't been published yet, but the way it turned out is that I took a calligraphy class, and someone at my church says, "Oh, we'd like you to learn calligraphy, why don't you teach it?" So I started teaching calligraphy. It's like I would teach whatever I learned the previous week. And Sergio, I knew Sergio, that's another story, but I knew Sergio. Sergio asked me, I'm looking for a letterer because I'm doing a new comic book from Pacific Comics called Guru the Wanderer, and I'm looking for a letterer. And I said, I'm a terrific letterer. And, I had lettered a comic book before, but well, I figured Sergio's not a very good artist. No one's going to know this.
Yeah, the book's probably going to get canceled in a couple of
issues.
It'll be an easy gig.
Yeah, it's not going to last.
And then, in '84, USAGI wasn't first. He was actually a backup character.
He was a secondary character in the Nielsen Ground from the storyline, and Nielsen was going to be my Lord of the Rings, where I had it planned out as a 2,500-page epic. It told the story, followed Nielsen and Hermie through life, and how basically the entire story tells about the decline of the anthropomorphs, or the funny animals, the human-like animals, and the rise of the goblins, which would become the humans. And it would end in this great epic, huge battle in this castle just offshore. It's like I got the inspiration for the castle by the Abbey at Mont Saint-Michel in France, and they're all gonna die. It was gonna be great. USAGI loses an eye. USAGI would have made an appearance in page 1,000, and at the final battle, USAGI loses an eye. Nielsen's dying, and the only survivors are Hermie and Nielsen's son, and everyone dies. But it would have been great. You would have loved it, but.
So you started out with that, but then in the actual second issue of Albedo was actually the real first appearance of USAGI.
Correct.
I mean, even though he was in the previous story.
Well, he was not in the previous story. He was not at all. He was in the first Nielsen story. The second the second issue of Albedo, Steve Galacci published the first and second issues, and for the second issue, he says, no, I'm going to publish a second issue. Do you have anything else? And I said, oh, okay, well, I've been toying around with a samurai character named USAGI YOJIMBO. So, let's do that, something different. So I did it. He gave me the cover even. And now, 35 years later, after that first USAGI story, I just fell in love with the character. So Nielsen got pushed aside in favor of USAGI. And USAGI's been my life for the past 3.5 decades.
Yeah. And then you went to Fantagraphics and did a lot of short stories in Critters.
In Critters, yeah. USAGI seemed to be the most popular feature in the anthology, funny animal anthology, Critters from Fantagraphics. And so, I suggested to Kim Thompson, my editor at that time, maybe USAGI should have his own series, and Kim agreed. So USAGI started as his own comic book at Fantagraphics, and a few years later, it seemed like Fantagraphics had changed, whereas almost all their other books were more adult, such as books like Hate, Love and Rockets, things I really enjoy. However, USAGI just did not fit with that line. And by then, I had already established a relationship with Mirage Studios, Kevin Eastman, Peter Laird, who created the Ninja Turtles. And so they said, oh, anytime you want to publish anything through Mirage, let me know, or let them know. So I published the Space USAGI miniseries through them, and later we just talked and we hit it up really well. And they offered, if you want to bring USAGI over. So I considered it and I went over. And when I told Kim, said, I'm moving over to Mirage, and Kim told me, oh, we expected that a long time ago. It took you so long. So I've always had and still have a wonderful relationship with Fantagraphics. So they published my first 7 trade paperbacks. But then I went on to Mirage as a color series, and that lasted for 16 issues and 2 Space USAGI miniseries. That was a fun time.
Yeah. And speaking of turtles, not only did you do that, but USAGI ended up in the animated series and his first toy. I mean, that must have been just like insane at the time.
That was fun. USAGI and the Ninja Turtles started off roughly at the same time. They were a few months older than I am. I think the Turtles were first published in May of '84, whereas USAGI was November of the same year, 1984. And at that time, there were very, very few black and white comics. There was like ElfQuest, Cerebus, Grendel, and just a small handful. And so we kind of became friends. We gravitated towards each other just to support each other. I wrote them letters, they wrote me letters, I sent them artwork, which unexpectedly they published it, which I was pretty upset about, because if I knew they were going to publish it, I would have sent them a nice piece. But yeah, and when they had a TV series, I remember it was at San Diego Comic-Con. I was just sitting with Peter, and Pete said, do you want a USAGI toy? And I said, oh, sure. He said, that'll be neat. And he said, okay, and USAGI probably have to be in the TV series. And I said, oh, that'll be even better. And he said, well, have your people contact our people. And I did not have any people at all. So they gave me some of their people, and it was a nice transition. But that first USAGI toy, well, first of all, I knew it had to fit in the Ninja Turtle toy line, and all the turtles were really bulked up, really top heavy. And when I first saw the USAGI toy that they had made, it was even bulkier than what was originally what was actually made. And I asked for changes, had them slicked out. It looked like He-Man's with USAGI's small head on it. So I asked, can you just modify a few things? And they did, and we had a nice compromise. And it was, the detail was wonderful. USAGI in full armor. And USAGI appeared in a couple of the TV series. And whenever they had a TV series, well, not whenever, but in 3 of their animated series, they always contacted me and said, oh, we'd like to have USAGI in there. And it's always great.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty rare, especially being like an independent creator, to like attain that level, And of course, then you worked Fantagraphics for a number of years, and then you went to Dark Horse.
Fantagraphics to Mirage.
Oh, to Mirage, then to Dark Horse.
I left Mirage because they stopped publishing, because they're in Massachusetts, and unknown to them, there was a major leak in the building where they were, and they did not find out about it until the spring thaw, when the entire top level with all the computer equipment pretty much got washed out, literally. And so they said, they were going to stop publishing, but they gave me about 8 months notice. So I sent out, I think, about 7 letters to different publishers, and I got back 11 replies saying that they would like to offers to publish me. Even one DC said we would like to, but however, it's completely out of our genre, and we don't do creator own. So it was nice that Lee Northing, the editor at that time, contacted me personally to tell me that. However, Dark Horse, the editor-in-chief was Diana Schultz, and I had worked with her when she was editor at Comico, and I did a backup story for a thing called Fish Police, Steve Moncuse's Fish Police, and I had worked with her, enjoyed her, the way she edited, and so she said, as soon as the last Mirage issue is published, we'll have the first USAGI issue of the next month. And so I went to Dark Horse. That was in 1992, and I stayed with Dark Horse until this year. And we just made an announcement that I'm moving over to IDW. And IDW will be a full color series.
Speaking of color, I mean, obviously USAGI has mostly been done in black and white. You know, obviously they have both have advantages and not necessarily disadvantages. They're just different. What is? I mean, which do you prefer?
I prefer both. Way back in the day, computer coloring was a bit just beginning, but now it's the colorist Tom Luth. My colorist is in the audience here. He's been coloring my covers since almost the very beginning. And we did a book called Namazu. It's a crossover with the Ninja Turtles, Namazu, about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And his coloring was wonderful, and that just converted me.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess we should note that IDW is going to be reprinting them with Tom doing the color.
They're reprinting the entire USAGI library, about 6,000 pages, in color. I mean, it'll take a while.
Yeah.
But Tom's working on the ongoing series. I don't know who or how the older coloring is going to be done. There's actually, my publisher in France is coloring some of their stories themselves and printing the French edition in color. I hope at least Tom will be able to supervise or oversee the current coloring for the older stories.
And speaking of France, I mean, USAGI has been, I mean, the worldwide market for product has always been high, but I know USAGI has been translated in nearly every language.
Well, it's been in, I think, about 16 languages, including Indonesian and Russian, and actually I'm going to Poland next month for a convention there, and I've already been accepted an invitation to Lucca, which is in Italy, for October, and I'm already making plans because I got invited to Belgium in next year, 2020. So yeah, USAGI's still international.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I've always loved about the series is how easily accessible it is to every age, you know. And I mean, you do longer storylines, but you also, it's still very accessible to kind of jump right in almost at any point. It's very
accessible. It's very reader friendly. You can pretty much pick up any trade paperback, and all you need to know is USAGI is a masterless samurai in a 17th century anthropomorphic Japan, and that's all you need to know, and you can go on from there.
Yeah, and that's also been one of the big successes of the books over the years is especially young readers really gravitate towards it. And I know libraries have been a really big help to that.
I received a number of library awards, like the American Library Association Award, the Young Adult Library Services Awards, and others. And, you know, they cite the historical research as well as the accessibility. It's, like I say, it's very reader friendly and very consciously so. I mean, there's not a tremendous amount of backstory you have to know to enjoy the Usagi books. And when I introduce a character, even a recurring character, I always, right off the bat, try to mention his name, even Usagi. Usagi's mentioned in every story at the beginning. Like he'll either introduce himself, oh, my name is Usagi, or someone will say, oh, Miyamoto Usagi or something.
Mm-hmm.
So his name will always be mentioned. So even though he's a title character and everything, it's still a conscious decision as a writer to introduce the characters as clearly as possible.
And also, speaking of libraries, you've actually done a number of exhibits at different libraries, most recently locally in Temecula.
Well, Temecula was at a museum.
Yeah.
It's the Temecula Valley Museum. I live in Temecula, and I did not know there was a museum there. And it's a cute little museum. Earl Stanley Gardner, the creator of Perry Mason, lived in Temecula. So there's a nice garden section, and there was a nice, quite comprehensive exhibit for Usagi, and there was a special documentary made by Kyle Wright, filmmaker, and it was wonderful. It's available online, either through his site or IDW linked the documentary through their website, so you can see it. It's about 10, 15 minutes. 13, yeah. It's really well made, and they had things like baking blueberry muffins. Yeah.
Well, and also, I think I want to touch a little bit on the Sakai Project, which was a project done for Stan as a benefit. And I think the thing that was most, beyond the artwork and the artists that donated their time and money, just how loved not only Stan was, but his character. And Caps was also very involved with that. If you don't know about Caps, it's a really great artist forum, kind of.
Well, the Sakai Project came about because my wife, Sharon, my late wife, developed brain cancer. And we have very good insurance, really good. But even with that, expenses were very high. And a friend, Tom Rodriguez from CAPS, the Comic Arts Professional Society of Los Angeles, came up to me and said, we'd like to do something to help. We can get a few people, send the word out, and to donate artwork for eBay sales. And I was kind of resistant to the idea, but when he said, oh, and they could draw Usagi. And I love seeing other people's interpretations of Usagi. And so I said, oh, okay, that'll be kind of nice. And so he sent the word out, and we expected he said maybe we'll get maybe 25 pieces that we'll auction, just your friends, Sergio will do one, Scott will do one, and a few other people. We got, I think it was like 430 or something from around the world. We got one from Macedonia, a lot from Europe, and there was even a secondary fundraiser in France going for me for that. And this is for Sharon. By that time, Sharon was pretty much bedridden, and she was at home. She was breathing through a trach, and she had a G-tube, and we took care of her at home. So I had I did not do that much work. Most of my time was spent, just caring for her. She passed away about 5 years ago. But the Sakai Project was great. It was I think, Usagi's 30th anniversary. So it was not only a benefit for Sharon, but it was a celebration of 30 years of USAGI YOJIMBO. And we had people like Art Adams, J. Scott Campbell, Jack Davis, incredible talent, Neil Adams, so many people, it's hard to mention. Like I said, we had more than 400 pieces, and all drew Usagi. And Dark Horse said, there's so much great artwork, we'd like to make a book of it, and all the profits would go towards Sharon's care. And Bongo Comics, Bill Morrison was the editor. Matt Groening, the creator of The Simpsons, allowed Bill to work on the Sakai Project during Bongo office hours. So, it was wonderful. He acted as editor. Steve Wyatt did the online auctions. Tom Rodriguez did all the coordination. And we raised a lot of money for Sharon. More than we actually needed. And whatever was left over after Sharon passed away was given back to CAPS to kind of act as seed money for like a program to help other cartoonists in need. There have been others where either medical or financial or some kind of a reason they need a little extra help, and so that seed money was there to start off like a nonprofit organization that was part of CAPS. So that was really neat. But it's like we could not afford to commission all those pieces by such talented artists, but to think that they did it all for free is just staggering, and it's a beautiful book.
Yeah, it's a really wonderful book, but I also want to point out that how great this guy really is. Because at San Diego Comic-Con and Boston Comic-Con that year when the Stan Sakai Project came out, he had a donation bucket for the Japanese American National Museum. And between those two conventions, he raised $4,119 for that museum. And that, I think that's, what between that project and that's what I love about comics and their the creators.
Now my charity is the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund. And I think last year we raised more than $6,000 for them.
There's that, and I'm also a big supporter of the Hero Project.
Oh, the Hero, yeah.
Which, and they're both, if you can spare any money to either one of those organizations, they're really wonderful organizations. The Comic Book Legal Defense Fund they've been fighting for years.
Actually, not the legal defense, it is the Hero Initiative that I've been...
Oh, the Hero Initiative.
Yeah, it's not forbidden.
In the Hero Initiative, what they do is kind of what Stan was talking about with CAPS and the helping. They actually help creators when they're in need. Mm-hmm. And that's really important because, Stan and some other people, Sergio, have been very lucky, mm-hmm. but a lot of these older creators have, they worked, from paycheck to paycheck. And then when they retired, there was, no, insurance or anything. So between CAPS and all these other things, they actually help these creators.
Well, Jim McLaughlin from the Hero Initiative would call every week and he'd inquire, how's Sharon? Do you need any help? And after the day that Sharon passed away, someone from the Hero Initiative brought dinner for me.
Wow.
So it's wonderful.
So one of the other things is you kind of knew this guy. I don't know if anybody knows who he is. This guy named Stan Lee. What is your connection to Stan?
I got a call one day out of the blue saying, "Hi, this is Stan Lee. I'm looking for Stan Sakai." He really sounds like Stan Lee. It's the strangest thing. I mean, George Takei always sounds like George Takei. Stan Lee always sounds like Stan Lee. But he was looking for a letter for the Spider-Man Sunday newspaper strips. The daily strips were being lettered by someone else, but the current, this is back in '84, I think, the current letterer couldn't do it anymore, so he asked if I could do the lettering, and I did the lettering for the Spider-Man Sunday strips for 25 years. And it's before, at the very beginning, I go over to Stan and turn my work in, and he was the nicest guy. He was incredibly nice. He would stop whatever he was doing, even leave meetings, and to come out and chat for a while, look over the artwork, and then just talk. And then every so often he said, new book, the new Marvel Masterpieces came out. Let me get a copy for you. And so my first 25 Marvel Masterpieces hardback books are all signed by Stan, given to me by Stan. And when my daughter Hannah was 4 months old, she went to her very first comic book convention, and Stan was a guest there. And Stan was walking around. He came over, and I said, "Oh, can I take a picture of you and Hannah?" So they took a picture together of Stan holding Hannah, and I gave him a copy. And the next time I came over, there was a picture of Stan and Hannah next to the picture of Stan and then President Reagan. But he was a nice guy. I once told him that you are my son Matthew's hero because you do he was hosting the Iron Man cartoon series. And whenever Stan was on, Matthew would say, "Oh, quiet, Stan's on. So I told him that, and the next day he sent him a big box full of toys and comics, animation cells, all signed to Matthew from Stan. And there was a backpack that Matthew used for conventions, only at conventions, and he still has that.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, nice guy.
So what can we look forward to with the new book?
Basically, color. The series will continue on. USAGI, even though it's gone from many publishers, is still one continuous storyline. It's one man's journey. It's a one rabbit's journey. It's just that because I'm the entire creative team, so it's my vision, and there's no need for reboots or anything. It's a seamless transition from the last Dark Horse issue to the first IDW issue, which comes out in June. And it's great. I love doing USAGI. It's, like I said, I've been doing this for 35 years, but I still enjoy USAGI. I love all the aspects of the writing, the penciling, lettering, inking, everything. And Tom does a marvelous job with the coloring. He sent in the first issue, completely colored, and it looks fantastic.
Now, will we maybe see, because one of my favorite things is when you do those little side stories, just, because they're fun, because they're, stuff that isn't necessarily part of the,
You mean the
main
chibi
stuff.
USAGI?
Yeah.
Yeah, my wife Julie is an artist in her own right, and she does chibi characters, and we collaborate on a series called Chibi USAGI. And chibi, those big heads, cartoon ones. And these are pretty much, no one dies in these. They're pretty just fun stories. A lot of them are takeoffs on stories I had done before. And she's an excellent artist, and they'll continue. In fact, we have a contract, or she has a contract for a Chibi USAGI graphic novel.
Oh, that'll be that. I think that's gonna be a lot of fun.
That is fun. We started working on the first story, and I want to make it where Chibi USAGI meets USAGI, where USAGI goes into the Chibi world. And it's just fun.
Oh, that sounds really great. I guess one of the other things is, after 35 years, some people would be like, this is, do I really want to keep doing this?
I love doing it.
Yeah, and I think what's great about it is not only do you love doing it, but the reaction.
Mm-hmm.
There's still there. We now have that generational thing where you continuously get new readers, and I mean that must be exciting.
It is new readership, both in the U.S. and other countries. It's wonderful. One of the reasons for going over to IDW is that it will be a color series. And USAGI's been black and white for so long, and when USAGI started, black and white comics were acceptable. But nowadays, there aren't many black and white books out in the market. There's Walking Dead, that's about it, and USAGI. And if we want to cultivate a new readership, I think we need to go to color. And color nowadays, before I was resistant to color, but it's advanced to the point that it looks wonderful, big.
Well, I think it's also not only the advancements, but the printing has gotten a lot better.
Subtleties and shading around the faces, molding it looks great.
Yeah. Do we have any?
One more thing
Oh,
I
sorry.
should mention would be that USAGI is in a television development with Gaumont Films. Gaumont is the world's oldest film studio, and they're in France. They're looking to create an international brand, both in the U.S. and overseas. It's Gaumont is involved. It's also James Wan. He's a creative producer. James just finished the Aquaman movie. Also, two Dark Horse is involved, and yeah, we got also an inquiry by a director who's very well established that also wants to be involved in it. Though he didn't specify, and we didn't talk about to what extent.
Well, shoot, that's exciting news. I mean, what better way to celebrate a 35th anniversary with that? Do we have any questions today?
So the film's going to be live action?
No, it'll be a TV series. It'll be animated.
Oh, okay. I was saying that was, big director. I thought, well,
Actually,
are they going to do it live action like the
we
Turtle movies?
had offered to do a live action with Usagi CGI movie. We declined because the premise was Usagi and Tomoe and Gen in modern day Los Angeles. So we said, well, maybe not. But we've had all kinds of things from traditional animation to computer animation to even puppets. Jim Henson Company contacted us once to do like a Dark Crystal type of movie.
I think that would have been quite interesting.
Yeah, it would have been, yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to see the Usagi Muppet, though.
Yeah.
Probably look like Big Bird.
Probably. The weirdest inquiry we got was from Oliver Stone. This is way back in the day, but that was kind of strange. Any other questions? Yes.
So when you do lettering for Sergio, I mean, do you do the lettering first and then so he can fill in everything around it? Sometimes his panels are so dense you wonder where there's room.
He does sends a rough layout. Sometimes they're in various stages of inking. Sometimes panels are almost fully inked. Sometimes it's just glue pencil, like a circle is glue, a circle would be an army. I mean, it's sometimes very vague. But Mark Evanier does a script as a real script. And so he sends that to me along with the artwork. And I just hand letter. All my lettering is still hand letter. I still work very traditional. Hand lettering, I work on with pencil, paper, and inks. And the only thing I use a computer for is the emails and things. Yes?
We saw you at Honolulu Comic-Con last year.
Yeah.
Will you be there again?
I don't know. Probably not this year. I just couldn't make it. I had wanted to go to last week's, is it last week, 2 weeks ago, they had Amazing Con. Yeah, but I couldn't make it there because we went to the retailer summit in Charlotte. So I'm going back to Hawaii in about 2 weeks to visit my mom. So.
Speaking of lettering, I mean, I was going to ask that question. I think most people don't realize that especially most lettering now, is not done by hand. I mean, you're probably one of the handful of people that still do it. And I think there's an art to that, And if you haven't seen the USAGI Artist Edition, they're wonderful books. But you get to not only see the art in its original form, but you can actually kind of somewhat see how lettering's done, how it's...
Oh, I've got something. Continue, Poppy.
Most people don't realize how, art is sometimes done today when it was done. I mean, they used to... when they needed to fix stuff, they would just literally glue a new word balloon on the page if they changed the dialogue. There was stuff called zipatone.
Oh, yeah.
That was like sheets of like little dots, and they would cut it very carefully out and put it on there. Well, now you can do all that stuff on the computer. But there's always the debate about traditional versus digital. I mean, they both have their advantages. But, well, we'll.
Yeah, whenever I go, whenever I travel, I always carry work with me, and I just have to have these pages for USAGI number 4 from IDW. And this page here is in various stages of development. You have the pencils up here, you have the hand lettering here, and you've got some inks here. So after the panel, if you want, we'll stay here for a few minutes. If you want to take a look at these, feel free to. So yeah, you can take a look to see how I work.
Yeah.
On my Facebook page, I often put the a process, the pencil, the rough pencils to finished pencils to inks throughout the entire process.
Yeah, and I think it really helps when you see this, whether you're just a person who reads the comics or actually wants to do artwork or one of the other things. When you see, that's what's great about, I love about Comic Fest is that you can actually kind of,
Exactly.
People can walk up, you can walk up to Stan anytime.
And most current artists work digitally on the computer. The people here, because we're just oldies, I mean, we're the guys that still work on paper. And it's getting rarer and rarer nowadays.
Well, and you can see, if by all means, please come up and see this, because you get to see the process, right there. And especially, for me, the lettering is one of the most fascinating things, because, I think a lot of people don't realize how every little thing in a comic book, how important each step of the way is, from the script to the art to the lettering to the coloring, because any one of those things can actually just literally kill a book.
Right.
And in the case with Tom's a wonderful colorist,
yeah,
and when you see somebody like Tom's work, especially when he does Stan stuff, or even Groove, you can really see, even though they're kind of have a cartoony look to them, color can be very important. It can really break a book.
Like anyone who can color Sergio's work is. And Tom knows what things to accentuate and what things to that color in one mask. Because he had said that if he colored every single figure that Sergio has in a crowd scene, then it'll just look like confetti. But the way he handles it, I mean, there's planes that you can see. He knows what to bring forward and what to make, what to receive. So it's an art. It's wonderful.
And of course, I mean, obviously you're known for USAGI, but I loved your short story you did for the Mouse Guard.
Oh, yeah.
For Dave Peterson. Dave does a book called Mouse Guard, and he actually has a side book where other creators actually get to play with his toys. What was that like?
It was fun. Actually, that was a story I had done years and years before, and I had drawn about 3 pages of it. This is when I was first reading Redwall, and so hey, I can do a story about real critters. So I wrote out a short story. Actually, it was going to be like a 10-page story, and I did a few pages of it, maybe 3 or 4. And when he approached me to contribute to Legends of the Guard, I brought out that old story. I trimmed it down a few pages, and it turned out great.
You have a question?
When you were first starting out, what was the hardest part of making this story?
The hardest part, back then it was making connections. It was if you want to get into the comic books nowadays, the best thing is to network with other people, network with other artists, with publishers, editors, everyone. Nowadays, it's a lot easier with conventions, especially a small convention like this, where you can actually talk to the creators. You can get immediate feedback. That is probably the best thing, because when I was first starting out, there weren't as many conventions as there are now. But the conventions were like this, where you could actually talk to people. And I'm pretty introverted. I don't like to show my work out too much. So that was a big hurdle for me. Yeah. And nowadays with the computer, you can post things online. It's but it's with computer, it's easier to be seen now because of the computer. However, because there's so much stuff out there, it's harder to be noticed. So you have to rise above everyone else, or either that or make friends, because you never know who you know now. Maybe a contemporary, a peer. You don't know if 5 years from now they'll be in a position to offer you work. Because a lot of my jobs, like the mouse guard story, it came because I knew David, and friends like to work with friends, and make connections, just show your work around, show that you're serious about it, and show that you're good.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Yeah, what were some of the album covers that you did? You said when you first started freelancing.
These are a lot for children's albums. I remember one about for Christmas, and another for the 4th of July, and there weren't any big groups or anything. These are children's albums, but they paid well, and they also came with a little booklet that I did a lot of.
You did the booklets too.
Huh?
You did the booklets too.
The booklets too, yeah. Each one had like maybe 50 drawings inside, and a color cover for the album.
A few years back, you did a series of little statues of the USAGI universe. Do you have any more plans for that kind of?
Not right now. This was done by Roku Toys. They took out a license for that, and they were a lot of the sculptors worked at Industrial Light and Magic, George Lucas's outfit, and one of the sculptors was even a sculptor for the British Museum. And they were fantastic. I mean, they were really great. However, the license lapsed, and right now there's no plans for any new edition. There are 2 editions, each with maybe 6 figures each, but nothing planned so far. Any other questions? Yes.
Well, one of the things I really like about USAGI comics is just the details about Japanese culture in the 17th century. And so I was wondering, how much time maybe now you don't have to spend as much time doing research as in the beginning because you're probably an expert on that time period. But what's sort of the research process for doing?
Okay, this question was about the research that I do for USAGI, and I still do quite a bit of research. It varies according to the story. Some don't require any research at all, and I know a lot of things like the architecture and traditions of Japan, so I can kind of go with what I know. However, things like the first 3 issues of the IDW series is one story called Bunraku. Bunraku is the traditional Japanese puppet theater, and their tradition of puppetry is very different from the Western style. The Western style is more slapstick, Punch and Judy type of thing, whereas the Japanese tradition is taken more from kabuki, where it's very dramatic. It's dramas, and they can take up to 10 hours to tell one story, and they'll tell it in acts. And you can go to one act, and then maybe a week later go to another. But so it's very different, and so I did quite a bit of research on puppetry, and both on YouTube and books that I have, and the story takes place in a haunted puppet theater. This story I'm working on, the hero, is about a woman author, and my character is modeled after Lady Murasaki, who was the author of the world's first novel, the Tale of the Genji. And my character here is, again, like I said, is modeled after Lady Murasaki, who lived in the court, the high court back then. So each one takes varies according to research. When I did Grass Cutter, the research alone took about 5 years.
Wow.
Yes.
What were some of your favorite samurai movies or TV shows?
Oh, I grew up in Hawaii,
Yeah.
in Honolulu, in an area called Kapuhulu. Just down the street from me was the old Kapuhulu Theater, and every weekend they showed Chambara, or sword fighting movies, Japanese sword fighting movies. And yeah, I I grew up watching Inagaki Samurai trilogy. Tangis is in the one-armed, one-eyed swordsman. Ichi, the blind swordsman. Oichi, the one-eyed, the blind swordswoman. And there's a lot of handicaps, but yeah, I grew up with all the Kurosawa films, and I love that. My favorite movie was a trilogy called Satomi Hakkenden, based on I think like a 52-volume work, and it had everything. I mean, it had magic, it had transvestite, it had great wars, heroic. It's wonderful. And I saw the 1957 version in the theater. Whenever it came back every year, I always see it, and it was great. But Satomi Hakkenden and Seven Samurai are my two favorite movies. Satomi Hakkenden for the fantasy, and Seven Samurai just because Kurosawa is such a terrific director. Yes?
What made you think of the idea?
The idea for Usagi came about because I wanted to do a series inspired by the life of a real 17th century samurai named Miyamoto Musashi. And one day I drew a rabbit with his ears tied up into what's called a chonmagi, a samurai top knot. And it was simple, but I loved the design. It was really unique. It was very clear. And so instead of making my character around Miyamoto Musashi, I used that character rabbit and named him Miyamoto Usagi. Usagi means rabbit in Japanese. Any other questions?
Come on, I know it's early, but you gotta have something. Really? There we go.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Space Usagi cartoon why that didn't happen back in the day?
We were developing, Mirage Studios approached me with Turner Entertainment to develop a TV series about my character, Space Usagi. There was a Space Usagi toy out in the Ninja Turtle toy line. And this was going to be Turner Entertainment's first creator-owned project. However, and we even did a 3-minute video, a 3-minute animation, bit of animation that was produced by Fred Wolf Films. And I think it's on YouTube, isn't it? Yeah. So you can look up Space Usagi. But the problem was that there was another Space Rabbit character about 3 years prior that they had high hopes for, that the entire toy industry had very high hopes for, that crashed so badly that it tainted any type of space rabbit type of theme. And so even though we had such huge backing, this is the first property since the Turtles that was created by Mirage or represented by Mirage, and like I said, Turner Entertainment was behind it, and but we could not get over that stigma of that green space rabbit. Yes.
Are you encountering people misinterpreting some of your work because we're not Japanese and we don't rub in Japanese culture? So you know, that people are interpreting things differently.
I don't think so. I've never gotten complaints. I remember one mother came up to me and said, you know, her son was reading Usagi, and she's always been curious about, you know, his taste of reading, and she had asked him, you know, it's kind of violent, but you know, what's the story about? And he replied, it's about honor. And I thought, wow, that's such a great answer. You know, that's the kind of stories that I would like to tell. And I've never had it where it's been misinterpreted for my intention. So I'm very simplistic, I guess. I try to write clearly.
Anybody else?
How did you get the idea of including the little dinosaur lizard.
Oh, okay, I have these,
They're great, I love them.
yeah, I have these lizards running around Usagi's world called Tokage. It literally means lizard in Japanese. And it also, it's fun to draw. I love dinosaurs. But the it has a definite niche in Usagi's ecosystem where things like cats, dogs, rats, possums, things that are pets and scavengers in our world are people in Usagi's world. So these Tokage take the place of wild animals, pets, and that sort of things. And I got inquiries that, oh, do they have those lizards in Japan? And I said, yeah, it's like they're running all over Tokyo, they get hit by cars, they're such a nuisance. It's like,
Have you ever thought about doing a Tokage story, in just, maybe like a silent type?
I have done a silent story with the Tokage where Usagi meets up with some Tokage, he feeds them and they'll follow him all over and they won't leave him alone. So, I think we're about done.
Yeah. So, so we've got the new Usagi in June.
Mm-hmm. And there's some other things coming up from IDW very soon in June and this summer.
Yeah, and then of course we get to the chibi Usagi.
Well,
It may not be this year,
Julie.
but I think we can all look forward to that because that's really that's been a fun little thing. And I'm sure IDW's got a lot of ideas, and I think they're a very good home for you.
Oh, they're fun, and it's like besides IDW, besides Usagi, I mean the Ninja Turtles are there too, so it's nice opportunities for crossover. I'm also doing a cover for their Star Wars books, and it's fun.
Yeah, no, it's really good, and also I know there's like 3 or 4 different variant covers by different.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of variants. However, for the first issue, I think Walter Simonson. I mean.
Yeah, you're like you probably said no, he's just not big enough.
So thank you for coming.
Yes, thanks for coming, everybody.